What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind-the-scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, life stuff. Now, a commenter mentioned burnout, and yeah, I probably should be careful about burning out on this. That said, we're gonna go through some reasons I like sociopaths or feel drawn to sociopaths, and then at the end, we'll go through how I think we should conduct field research going forward. Because while I like the literature and I'll still read up on it, I think the reason I was twitchy last video is I was trying to work from the literature. And for me, that doesn't produce the best results. Literature should be a supporting thing, which was my bad, not the book's fault. Now, in no particular order, sociopaths are living proof morality doesn't need to be defined strictly by capital S socialization, defined and controlled by society. And I think that's something people innately know if they're not society fans. So I don't mean sociopaths' outsider or altered moral codes are proof these outsider moral codes can exist, because you already know that, but rather they're living proof morality is a choice, and that choice doesn't come down to what society says you should do, what any particular ideology says you should do. It comes down to what you believe and whether or not you're willing to make that choice. And that's important, especially for baseline people, because sociopaths have almost no reason to uphold the codes they adopt or create. Now, if you look at it from the inverted shadow perspective we mentioned a few videos back, there does seem to be some kind of urge to do good or be good, however they define good. And maybe not even it is an urge. It's also, it does not come naturally. The same way shadow work does not come naturally to baseline people, which isn't to say baseline people are good and sociopaths are evil. There's something in the seeking. Now, this first point accidentally fragmented into maybe 6 smaller points. So what are the takeaways for this first point? Because I don't know how we're going to get to them if I just keep talking. One, I like the idea, or I like the fact, that they challenge the notion being good equates to being socialized. Following a herd and succumbing to peer pressure is not only not the path to goodness, but also that's usually how bad things happen. Especially when not so good people get a hold of consensus and socialization. I like that a sociopath is willing to be crucified, which, according to stigma and literature and even what they say about themselves most of the time, that sounds very contradictory, but it seems common for these higher-minded sociopaths to be willing to take a bullet for what they believe in. And then on top of that, in that inverted shadow work sense, anti-shadow work, I admire and feel camaraderie with seekers from across the pond. And then the next point, sort of tied in with that first point summary, in a less high-minded way, maybe, I like their anti-socialness. Same idea, different angle. I don't think antisocial necessarily equals evil, because I don't remember where I read it. It might have been from that book, but one of the classifiers comes down to whether or not these people have done things that are grounds for arrest. Well, human law isn't ultimate law. Laws differ place to place, and law enforcement officers are not arbiters of justice. In fact, very often the opposite of that. I like, at base, that sociopaths can and will antagonize or challenge society. And society and traditional socialization have some good stuff in them. But I don't like it when something has been the case for so long, people start treating it like it's fact, like it's some ultimate truth. Because then you get mobs of people who will kill anyone who dares think something different or do something different, regardless of the outcome or the intention. If it's not within the bounds of what always has been and what always will be, then it's evil and it needs to be destroyed. I like that sociopaths can and will tell that idea and those people to go fuck themselves. Without people like sociopaths, especially the higher minded ones, we would live in a stagnant, rotting society with no way out. More than we already do. And this is a side thing, but I appreciate how fearless they can be. It's weird that it sounds like I'm really curious to hear what all scares sociopaths. I've heard from a couple sources that jump scares are really the only thing that will cause a more traditional form of fear, feeling of fear. But that's not really fear per se. It's startling. But they do get, or it sounds like they do get, the physical effects of traditional fear, but they don't feel it and it doesn't stop them. It's tragic the way they developed this skill usually, but now that you have it, pretty cool thing to have. Which is another reason I like instead of saying neurotypical, I like baseliner, because calling people with special abilities and different opportunities disordered seems kind of missing something severely. And neurotypical is close, but the arrangement of neurotypical, it makes it sound like there's an area inside and everything else is outside, which even when it's trying to be neutral and clinical, you can't separate the ideas, the background ideas you're working from. I prefer baseliner because then it's a ground level and everything else is above. I mean, for example, a person who can tackle an active shooter without flinching, without even thinking about it, that's not somebody you want to call disordered or weird or something. Now, I said there's no order to this. One of the reasons I find them attractive romantically. Possession and control seem to be big things with them. I appreciate when a woman is possessive of me, malignantly territorial even, and forward about it. And that's because thanks to fearful avoidance, deep inside I feel like I don't deserve to be alive. Any possible reason anyone might like me is not a truth or a fact about me, something inherently good or desirable. It is a lie that I have perpetrated. And I already knew I'm always waiting for people to wake up at some point and realize they're bored of me, they don't like me, they don't want anything to do with me. But I didn't realize the extent to which I did that, how deep that runs. So it's probably not a great thing to be attracted to sociopaths who get bored, seem to be able to turn off any feelings they might have been developing for you, like a switch. Nonetheless, when a sociopath woman marks me, that feels deeply affirming. Because these people have every reason not to see any value in you. And people say things like you should develop your own sense of self-worth, you should affirm yourself, and I agree with that to an extent. I have the infrastructure to do that to an extent. But I think you reach a point or an age, you realize those deepest wounds you won't be healing by yourself. You know, you don't try to do a quadruple bypass on yourself. You get a surgeon to do that. When you need surgery on your metaphorical heart, you get an unreasonably bad bitch to do it. And it also seems like these advanced surgeons, lots of them have ASPD, are sociopaths, which Makes a lot of sense. And the fourth point is kind of connected to the third. I phrased it in relation to love, but this goes for everything. If they have anything to do with you or anything else, there's something to that. Because if you had nothing, they wouldn't be dealing with you at all. And maybe some of their intentions are bad, but even if they have bad intentions, that still means you have something. Or if they attach themselves to something and they stick to it, there is something they see in that. I view it as a degree of frank pragmatism you can trust. And let's say a sociopath does get bored of you, or doesn't want to interact with you, or anything like that. It's better to be alone than to be interacting with, let's say, baseliner people who are interacting with you only out of pity. Right? Because that's pathetic, first, and how long is that going to last? Because it's based on nothing. It's based on rules these people are following because for performative reasons, also for peer pressure. It's not something they want to do if you suck, and they won't do that forever. And how much worse will that hurt when you realize not only are you alone now, but also you were lied to. Another thing about sociopaths I like is the overblown measures they will take to get things they want sometimes. And I know this is a mixture of impulsivity and lack of concern for or awareness of consequences, long-term thinking. This combination of things that people say are strictly negative, but I don't think that combination is strictly negative. Dangerous? Probably. Harmful? To somebody, also probably. But occasionally, and it's hard to tell what will or won't cause them to do this, but they'll turn into Terminators sometimes to get certain things or to get certain things done. And as someone who lives terrified of consequences, including consequences for shit you didn't do, which is even scarier, that's very admirable and attractive. It's also a nice thing to have on your side when you need it. And on top of all that, it keeps things interesting. Now, there is a more malignant and psychotic side to this. It seems like sometimes they'll get impulses to do really deranged shit. Maybe not to carry it all the way through to some dreadful end, but just to see if they can get it up to the point they could carry it all the way through to the end. And that's the interesting thing about that. I'd like to know what goes on in their minds when they're doing this, because like I said, I don't think they usually do, even when they're doing deranged shit like this, carry it all the way out. It seems like they like getting just up to the point they know they could, and then they'll choose not to do it. Even if getting up to that point was wacky. An admirable level of restraint, let's say. And the next point connects up to this one. Their kindness is as unreasonable as their aggressive shit is. And when I say unreasonable, I mean beyond the reasoning levels of a baseline person. When a sociopath feels compelled to do a kindness, they'll do it at great expense to themselves or beyond the level a baseline person would say, okay, that's enough, or no, that's too much, I can't do that. Which is another reason I say, despite all this talk of how transactional they are, how solipsistic or self-centered they are, people often forget everybody's like that first. And second, charity comes from a selfish place by default. Kindness comes from a selfish place by default. Selflessness comes from a selfish place by default. So yes, maybe they are doing this on impulse to satisfy some code they take seriously, but what are you doing when you try to do something charitable? You're trying to make yourself feel good. by helping people? Aren't you such a good person? Or you're trying to make the world a better place, because wouldn't it be nice to live in a better world? It makes you happy to see people not miserable. And I don't think this is semantics at all. You need to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, so you can do it better and have more control over yourself and make these things decisions and not strictly pressured impulses or inner impulses. My point is, sociopaths can be habitual helpers greatly to their detriment, and they set quite the standard when they do that. Because to them, the act of doing something good for whatever reason or for whatever code is more important to them than whatever negative consequence they'll face for doing it. You know, no good deed goes unpunished. That's a phrase baseline humans like. I like a lot because it's true. Anytime you try to do anything good, you will be made to pay for it, painfully. And that can, often will, lead you to do less or not at all. Sociopaths see no good deed goes unpunished and say, fuck it, we ball. Which is why I reiterate the point, if we want to get out of this shitty condition the world is in, we're going to need a lot of higher-minded sociopaths to break these to take the pain of breaking these cycles. And it's unfortunate, it's really unfortunate that the people who are the way they are because of how ugly the world is will probably need to be the ones who fix that. Very angelic, very Christy. Now, another thing I like about them is not necessarily something they do, but is rather a consequence of trying to understand and love them. Now, when you feel attracted to them, I mean, all sorts of attraction like this, it's that draw, that natural, instinctive draw. But the draw alone doesn't make love happen. If you want it to happen, you need to do things. And some of those things you need to do, especially when you love a sociopath, is to open your mind and your heart a lot more than is probably comfortable for you. And that's a good practice. It's also a good feeling. In some way, it also helps you heal. Now, I just went through a very complicated way of explaining this, but we'll throw that away. It's simple. To seize upon this love, you need to trust to an extreme extent. And when you trust like this, and it works, you become a little more able to open a mind that maybe the world forced closed. Open a heart that maybe the world forced closed. Because with how different you two are neurologically, you won't be able to make this work if you're both hiding in your trenches on opposite sides of a battlefield. You have to come out, and fortunately, love is such a good feeling, it might be just enough to get you both to come out where you need to be. And once you're here, maybe if you're not, even if you're not totally open with everybody, you've regained your ability to open up and to feel, and then you can start healing. Because I have a little bit of theory. Well, when you're dealing, it's not this part isn't really a theory. When you're dealing with sociopaths, you can well assume they are busted in some way, probably fucked up severely and early. So maybe if you are someone who is attracted to them, in spite of all of the horror stories about dealing with people with ASPD, all the stigmas, all the this, all of that, in your core, there is still something that draws you to them. Maybe that draw is some kind of evolutionary or spiritual corrective mechanism, bringing together the sorts of people who can be what the other needs to get into a more acceptable life state, soul state. I don't know about that for sure, It'll be really funny if in a year I'm posing the sociopath question. But I don't think that's what's going to happen because I've been attracted to these people pretty consistently throughout my life before I had a name to put on them. And with ENTJs and the typology thing, I've had the worst experiences with ENTJs, and I still like them a lot. So there is precedent for this. The next thing is I enjoy their curiosity. It seems like with sociopaths, against stigma, against common thought, and across a variety of MBTI types, sociopaths seem very interested in people. And on one level, you can reason that out as they have to be. They have to be interested in people to learn how to fit in. But that feels reductive. Because most of them do seem interested in the way baseliner people operate, interact with one another, understand one another. And it goes beyond simple trying to figure out how to put together masks. I still don't totally understand why they're curious like this. Especially when, in many cases, even the sociopaths who want to integrate with society don't really. As in, they are deeply fascinated with the people who push them away and they push away from and make push them away. And another thing to add to this, it seems like I love in group judgments and observations. It seems like older, more mature sociopaths, maybe not universally, we're going to figure this out, but have very negative opinions of younger sociopaths who haven't figured out how to control their impulses or act edgy. That in itself is interesting, but what I'm finding interesting is it seems like sociopaths, lots of them develop self awareness. It might take time, take years, but I would say, my guess, based on absolutely nothing, sociopaths 30 and older, but it seems like this gets more intense with age, have very clear, defined understandings of themselves in relation to the rest of the world. And another thing is, we mentioned precociousness in the last video. It seems like sociopaths pretty early get an idea that they are not like other people. But unlike a Joe Dipshit baseliner dude who will get to 70 without ever bothering to learn anything about himself, or rather, learning only about his idea of himself, never looking in a mirror, never looking left or right, it seems like sociopaths, maybe by necessity, but also probably by this curiosity, which is, I'd really like to understand what this curiosity is. It seems like many of them grow into an advanced form of self-awareness. And maybe that doesn't always reflect in their behavior, but they know, which is more than you can say for most people. Next thing is something we covered yesterday, but putting it here briefly anyway. I like sociopaths' humor quite a lot. Transgressive. Mean, uncomfortable, but usually true in really funny and harsh ways. And the last one, a more personal one, I got nailed in another uncomfortable but true way. I have an egocentric, ego-centered savior complex. And I knew, and that's another thing I knew, but I did not realize how deep that ran. But this is a bit of an elaboration on one of the earlier points. Less pretty, more selfish elaboration. I appreciate that sociopaths are fucked up. Not only for the mild camaraderie sense, which is another thing. The more I learn about most sociopaths' childhoods, the more I feel bad that I feel bad about my childhood. But at the same time, on my father's side, I've talked about my paternal grandfather before. He almost killed his kids a number of times and did really fucked up, torturous shit to them. And they are fucked up people, that entire side of the family, but none of them have ASPD. I mean, I think some of them have something, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, I appreciate that sociopaths are fucked up because they are things that I can act out my ugly savior fantasy on. But after getting nailed with that, I had to think about it. What am I doing, or why do I feel this way? Oh, and don't give me any of the objectification shit. We've talked about that on this channel at least 10 times over the years. Everyone is an object. I think what I'm doing with them is trying to heal myself. Now, we did talk about that earlier, but I spun it in a little bit of a prettier way. And I think mutual healing can be the outcome. But really, what I have is a compulsion. And sociopaths just so happen to be ideal people to act out that compulsion on. And the compulsion is giving to someone what I wish had been given to me. And I recognize that acting out this compulsion won't make people reciprocate, won't make people care for you the way you want to be cared for. And even if they did, would you want it knowing they're doing it strictly to reciprocate? Which is actually another benefit of sociopaths, is you know they won't reciprocate unless they want to, which is nice. You also come to accept the fact this learning to heal yourself bullshit is bullshit. So you're not getting anywhere. You aren't fixing yourself in any way. But at this point in my life, I think I don't care. I recognize that I have this compulsion, and acting on it makes me feel good, and the outcome will be positive, so fuck it and fuck everything else. I appreciate that sociopaths are an acceptable group of people, or are some acceptable individuals to act out my compulsion on. Love bombing without the love destruction. And on top of all that, potential partners who are for some reason, the only people who make any sense to me. Okay, those are all the reasons for now. Sure, we'll have more in time, but to close out the research I mentioned at the beginning of the video and referenced lightly in the last video or two. I'll have my Discord ID in the description, and I'll leave it there for about a week. First, I'm looking for people with ASPD, either formally diagnosed, or very probably you have it and you can explain why. Alternatively, also looking for people who have been, maybe don't have ASPD, but have been around ASPD people or fascinated with them the way I am for longer than I have been. When you add me, let me know which background you come from. And other information would be helpful, especially from the sociopaths. Loose age, mid, late, whatever, sex, and MBTI type if you know it. Enneagram 2 if you know it. If you don't, let me know. I have preferred, reliable resources. And what we're doing is, instead of doing one of these short-term studies like we did with typology, my goal is to put together a circle of people, either with ASPD or who know a lot about ASPD, whom I can pose questions and also can ask questions. Like, if you have ASPD, what are things you would like to know from other people with ASPD, because there are so few resources on this, and then I'll hit everybody up. And if we get a lot of people, then we'll create a Discord server specific to this. I'm not a big fan of the Discord server, but I'm not opposed to it. What I am opposed to is assorted retards who just want to talk to me. I'm not your friend, I'm not your brother, I'm not your dad. I don't care about your life, I don't care about what you're interested in. no, I don't think what you have is some really good idea, and I'd change my mind if I just heard you. 9 years of stupid, dumb fucking dudes in their late teens and early 20s who want to have intellectual conversations with me. And they always speak or write like Skyrim NPCs. Is that your idea of me? Do you think I'm an intellectual? Do you think you're an intellectual? You have it's been 9 years. You have 9 years of content, and you're supposed to be this super fan who totally gets me and can only be gotten by me. And there's nothing in your mind that says, the dude who hates people, really hates people, and has repeatedly stated that he hates guys exactly like me, and women too, we'll get to them. There is no way that he would hate me because I'm so fucking special. Don't be a dick and put me in a position that I need to be a dick to you, to make you fuck off. I can't make that any clearer. I don't want to be mean. But these fucking young dudes, it's like they need a dick to ride. And they never bring anything useful to the table. They never have, and they're supposed to be these super fans, they never, what they are never aligns with anything we talk about, so I don't know how they got so into this channel. Don't make me be an asshole. Please. I don't like doing it, but you don't, you sorts of people don't fuck off. Ever. Now, the women are a little different. They fall into two camps. First camp adds me and then either says nothing or makes small talk, and it's kind of pathetic and obnoxious because why would you go out of your way to do nothing? I mean, at least with the dudes, there's a pattern to what they do, why they do it, how they do it. There's at least some substance there. These women, they just show up and they stare at you like the emojis. I don't have anything especially aggressive to say to them because there's so little there. They just show up. Don't show up. And then there's the other category. Now, I don't mind the dismissive woman come on. Okay, that's my bread and butter. I don't mind that. In fact, going all the way back in the day, that's why I started a YouTube channel. I mean, yes, to get to know people and to voice my thoughts and whatnot, but also to meet women. I don't mind the interested woman come on. And there are instances I don't mind dudes contacting me, but that's very rare. As in, you're a dude, you want to contact me. Have something big. Have something really useful right now. If all you want to do is talk, no thank you. And let's put a hard age cap on that too. If you're a dude and you're younger than 26, don't contact me. For any reason. That makes filtering a lot easier. But then it's weird, this was supposed to be just an alert for contact, but when you put out your contact information, you do need to add disclaimers, and at the same time, I don't have tons of opportunities to talk about this because why do I not engage with my community much? Why do I not have a Discord server for the channel? Because people are so obnoxious and ugly when they don't get their way, when they don't get the attention from you they feel they deserve because they're so fucking special because they watch your channel. We're not friends. Final category of woman, don't contact me. Confused, I'm such a good person women. You look at this channel for 5 minutes, they should know not to contact, but it's always the same with them. And I don't know what their deal is. They DM you, they glaze you for a little while, then they start writing schizophrenic essays about their childhoods and the strategies some guru told them that's fixing it, but evidently not. And they go on and in circles, and they aren't, even in the glazing phase, you realize they aren't talking to you at all. There's no communication happening here. It's like they just selected you to be an outlet for whatever the fuck this is, and then they always cap it off by trying to engage you sexually and having a meltdown if you say no. And you should say no. In fact, you shouldn't deal with these women at all the moment you realize what they are. What's the first thing they do? They threaten you with whatever they have. One bitch cursed me and then said that she doesn't believe in magic. I don't know what's going on there. That's still a story I hold on to because it's... What a baffling encounter that was. Getting your testicles cursed in the middle of the night. Anyway, bad sort of women. If you're one of these people, and I had just recently had to block one, and that's another thing people do is they'll make accounts. These are brand new accounts, an hour old or a day old, and then they go straight into the schizophrenic rambling thing. They're like whirlpools who have decided to whirlpool in front of you. Anyway, so we don't ramble on any further. Discord ID in the description, ASPD havers or knowers, little information, and essentially you'll be someone I ask questions occasionally or take questions from occasionally. Everyone else, please don't. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.